right now AI can do so much is, drastically reducing the timelines to create ads, landing pages. But I think where that also gets dangerous is
Believe me, you're going to want to stay for that answer. Welcome to the Built to Scale podcast. I'm Shmuel Hirschberg, and today's guest is Kristen Palmer, fractional CMO, marketing strategist, and someone who has spent nearly 2 decades inside some of the biggest direct response and health and wellness companies in the game, where she helped people 10x their entire affiliate program. In this episode, we get into the timeless marketing principles that still move the needle no matter what year it is, why the webinar funnel is back and driving 6 and even 7-figure weeks right now, and what Kristen's team is quietly building, an AI media buyer skill. We also hit something I don't hear talked about enough, the hidden audit findings that show up inside 8-figure companies. If this episode adds value, subscribe, leave a review, and drop a comment and tell us what landed. Now, if you're sitting, relax. If you're at the gym, pick up the pace, because this episode is packed with the kind of operator level thinking that separates brands that plateau from brands that scale to 9 figures. I'm your host, Shmuel Hirschberg, and this is the Built to Scale podcast. Listen up and let's start scaling now. Kristen, welcome to the Built to Scale podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Shmuel. I'm excited to be here.
For sure, for sure. Why don't you just start off by just telling our listeners a little bit about your journey, and maybe like what that fractional part of CMO means.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my journey, interestingly enough, actually managing a customer service team, in-house customer service team for a large publishing firm a lot of us know in the space called Agora Publishing. At that point, I'm very analytical. And so we were in a growing phase as a company. There weren't a lot of systems or data points around customer service. Started bringing those to the team as well as marketing and upsell ideas. And then I found myself on the marketing team pretty quickly after joining the VIP customer service team. I cut my teeth in marketing, managing all of our lists, as well as handling all of our JV and affiliate deals. Moved over to affiliate management full time. And at that point, we taxed the affiliate program at Agora, which was very exciting.
Wow.
And really started fleshing out more data points and LTV points as well across the business. And then let's see, flash forward a few years, I stepped out of financial and moved over into health and wellness as well in terms of info products and superfood supplements. So it's been a really fun, roundabout journey. And that's really where I've found that fractional role being so fulfilling and being able to help. You usually only take on about 2-3 clients at a time. The fractional CMO is a key role of a marketing team where we're coming on, leading strategy, helping make any hiring decisions, structural decisions for not only the marketing team, oftentimes across other departments as well, working with the leaders. But for companies that are growing very quickly and aren't quite sure if they need a marketing director, a VP, what that looks like for their growth plan for the team. The fractional CMO role is a really great starting point. As you mentioned, working at Agora, I have a very strong hold working in companies doing 8 figures or more and really helping those 8-figure companies quickly move up to 9, 10 figures by not only again, addressing marketing systems, but also cross-functional systems as well. And I would say that is kind of unique to my role, my superpowers, not only as a marketing strategist, but again, as a little bit of a cross-functional conductor of the teams as well, and dipping into a little bit of an integrator skill set too.
Very cool. Very cool. And the name of your firm is called 5D Strategy, right?
Strategy.
So does that 5 or have anything to do with those skills or?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I love, as I mentioned, love working in health and wellness as well as financial. I find it's very fun balance of both. When I work in health and wellness, we talk about 3D world versus 5D world and spiritual development. And so I actually made that name, or yeah,
Okay. Very,
created that
very
name
cool.
more for my more like health and wellness and coaching clients who
Okay.
are kind of striving to help bring the world into like a 5D element.
Very cool.
Yeah, for a lot of
Okay.
folks in the financial space, they're like, cool, 5D sounds better than 3D.
Yep, yep, absolutely, absolutely. I'm a big baseball fan, so,
Well, there you
the quintessential player is known as having like is like the five-tool player, that he could do everything on the field. So
That's an
so
awesome analogy too. Fellow baseball fan, I can't believe I haven't thought of that.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. I want to get into, we talk so much on this podcast about all different types of stuff from affiliate partnerships to scaling ads to life cycle, lifetime value, and everything like that. Of course, AI we talk about, but I want to focus in a little bit on the very beginning of this podcast about some timeless principles. Okay, stuff that in today's ever rapid developing world, where if someone's listening and stumbles onto this podcast episode in another year or two from now, they could still get some excellent value from a marketing perspective. And the stuff that I want to ask you about is like what's like always been in the marketing arsenal? Like what's always worked and it's always going to work in your opinion?
Ooh, that's really a great question here. I think content marketing strategy will always be around. I think there will be nuances to, how, when, and where, but there will always be a need to build that rapport and the trust with customers and really like build as a customer is becoming more problem aware to solution aware. That will always be there. And I think with the advent of AI and AI clones, that the content marketing piece will become almost even more important. It's been around for well over 20 years in terms of educating and building trust in potential customers or customers that, we want to deepen the relationship and either get to renew or move on to higher ticket products. And so that piece will always be there. Now, the format, the medium, that may all change slightly. And I think we're all even seeing it now with the advent of AI and how we're kind of
Hmm.
changing some maybe campaign structures. But at the end of the day, the content and the building the trust, I see kind of staying the same even over the next, 20 years or so. And again, maybe even
Okay.
becoming more important.
And what about things that have kind of like have had their ups and downs and maybe is, hot again in 2026?
Yeah.
Any
Ooh,
any stuff?
yeah, the webinar format. The webinar format comes in and out, I think, over the last like 10 years. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Fladlian model. Jason Fladlian is a killer copywriter. And
I'm not. I'm not. Why don't you explain that to me?
yeah, yeah. So it is it is on a similar vein of content marketing and building nurture and trust. It is a hot list build, so a registration page to opt in to come to like a master class or a webinar. There is also usually a few days of nurture content built in there as well. So customer, let's say, opts into a webinar. It's usually within about 10 days from now. Even better if you can do it within about 5 days. That's like when you get the highest show up rate. And so again, opt into webinar masterclass. We have some email and SMS content to nurture them, prep them, get them to actually show up to the webinar. Live webinar, you can also evergreen it, both work. And then from there, you have a few days sales cycle after that. There are some smaller tactics in there as well, like a fast action bonus. So if anyone signs, like buys the product on the webinar or within 24 hours, they usually get an extra bonus that
Okay.
anyone who, purchases over the following week don't. Again, there are some tactics in there you can kind of take or leave, but that overall webinar model fizzled out a couple years ago.
And now it's
Um,
back.
and now it's back. And I'm seeing it work both across both financial and health as well.
And obviously this evergreen is essentially it's a webinar that you pre-record, but when the end user sees it, it has the feeling that it's live.
Yes. Yep.
So if you can do that, and you spoke about how getting them, instead of 10 days, get them within 5 days, why wouldn't you just do a an evergreen webinar that's not really live, as opposed to, I don't know, if you scheduled it, let's say once a week or something, and you do have like you are running it live. What's the advantage or disadvantage of just getting them into a webinar saying like, you stumbled upon us at the perfect time. We're starting a webinar in 15 minutes. Stick around.
Yeah. You can really do both. So just throwing that out there too. I typically see on the financial side, the live webinars, they do still work really well because you can do a little bit of a QA. Again, you're just building that trust like real time, especially with super high ticket offers like masterminds or price points of like 10K or higher. I do still see a world where like a live webinar needs to happen, maybe in conjunction also with an evergreen format.
How would that work?
We usually handle that with, so for example, with one of my clients, we have an evergreen funnel for a evergreen webinar funnel for a mid-ticket product. So that is about a $2,500 product that runs on an evergreen format all the time on Google and Facebook, or on Meta, excuse me, Google and Meta. And we do run that with affiliates as well. And then we also have a high ticket product, $35,000, that has a live webinar every other week and a QA webinar at least once a month. So at that point, we've kind of have three different webinar funnels going. Two of them are live, and then one of them is that like evergreen. The way we handle that is the evergreen funnels are mainly used for the evergreen webinar funnels are mainly used for acquisition. We do the best we can in terms of like targeting on the PPC platforms to try not to exclude anyone that's like deep enough in the pipeline that we don't want to be sending them to a bunch of different webinars. So we handle that again just on like segments and exclusion lists.
Okay.
And then for the live webinars, they're only promoted to our email list to very like specific segments in kind of like in the email, in the like active email segment or based on like pipeline metrics.
So you're seeing the live webinar, it could be used as a tool with, first of all, you mentioned it's a much higher price point. So you're saying you're using it as a tool with your already warmed up, the list that knows you, as opposed to going out on Meta or Google and trying to find a new audience.
Yes. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. Have also, again, this is a really, really high price point. So it doesn't work externally, like at scale, in terms of running that webinar to a cold audience. If we put like a few grand in spend behind it, we will end up like we will break even. But again, like at scale, to throw 20, 30 grand in spend behind that super high ticket webinar, it's just too cold of an audience, even with
Okay.
the webinar to really move through.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
that's $500 price point. Again, that's just spending every single day, bringing
And
in a few
this is
order.
all in the financial space?
Yes, on the financial space, that's that one client that again has kind of like three webinar funnels running congruently right now. On the health side, we are successfully running this model with red light products. And again, it works across different products and industries, but just one example with like an active client I'm working with right now, we're doing, 6, 7 figure weeks with a webinar model for red light.
Wow. And
A little bit
what's
higher, again, like a little bit higher ticket. Their lowest price point is around like 495 for like a small bundle, going all the way up to, about a $2,000 red light bed.
oh, okay. So we're talking about a red light bed. Okay.
Yep.
Not familiar with that product. And so this is all direct to consumer type of.
Yep.
So it's
Direct to consumer, mainly like digital.
amazing. That's really interesting. And in terms of like tactics, like how long are these webinars? Are you always testing them out, like in terms of how long the webinar should be until you get to the sale?
Yeah, usually about 45 minutes to 90 minutes is the sweet spot. I know that's like a wide range, but it does just kind of depend on, the product, the content, the awareness level of the audience as well. And depending on like whether you want to have a QA as a part of that or not too. But
Okay.
45 minutes to 90 minutes being the sweet spot there. There is a general format. I'm happy to share like a printout that we can just post in the description, but just really quick, like off the cuff for the podcast today. You really want to start the webinar, like building authority and trust, like as the guru or expert. Move in, there'll be like a just squeak in a couple testimonials there as well. Then move into answering all the pain points that you brought up in the on the registration page. Bonus points if you make like a PDF or a like kind of a notebook that they can follow along with as well. That'll also help keep up engagement on the webinar. And then, so let's say you're about half an hour to an hour in, again, depending on like how much you need to go over the mechanism and address the pain points. And then at that point, you're weaving in a few more testimonials, moving to kind of the close part of the webinar, moving to, any fast action bonuses and things like that as well.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's so many different tools for webinars out there, and I'm sure you've tested a lot. Can you give like a name or two
Yeah.
of some of the some of the systems that you're using?
Yes. I really like A Event a lot, is really, really great for evergreen webinars. And then Zoom for your just like one-off live webinars. Zoom. And I've seen it work, guys, where we're like quick testing something where we record a live webinar on Zoom. KPIs look good, like baseline KPIs look good. We literally take that exact Zoom call, throw it into A Event, like on a landing page, and then just start putting spend behind it and see what happens. Obviously, there's some light editing in there as well of that. But this stuff, I think some people get caught up on like the perfect webinar, having the perfect webinar. And sometimes you just have to like start good is good enough. You have to start somewhere.
For
But anyways,
sure.
yeah, back to platforms. The A Event is one I'm a big fan of. A lot of people like Webinar Kit as well. But yeah, I'm pretty hot on A Event right now.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, definitely just getting things out there is super, super important. I always talk about this in football, it seems like I'm going back to sports today, but in my sports metaphors, but in football, the wide receiver who can expertly drag his toes across the goal line, the end zone and stuff, gets paid lots of money for that. But any other position, any other job, especially as a marketer, toe dragging is not procrastination. Toe dragging is not an admiral skill.
No, no, we like to move with speed for sure.
For sure. Yeah. So even if it's not polished, if the system is in place,
Hmm.
obviously testing new things out is the name of the game for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
I
I
love what
totally agree with that.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned there too, like this, like when you said like the system in place, that definitely made my like integrator heart very happy as well. Because I think to your point, to like be able to quickly test for a marketing team to like be enabled and move quickly, like those systems like have to be there. Whether the system is like those baseline metrics that allow us to look at something and say, oh yeah, that's good enough. Like let's get that moving, or whether to say like, oh, we need to, tweak something at step 1 or 2, and then
Hmm.
we should be ready to go.
Yeah, and then you start iterating on that.
Yeah. So that system piece is so important, again, between both like marketing, data, and operations as well.
Yeah. And from a traffic perspective, just going back to the traffic side of things, you mentioned Meta and Google. Are you seeing similar trends like from classic direct response e-commerce type of advertising where Meta is, the top dog in that space where you could definitely scale the most? Is that what you're seeing for webinars as well? Are there like a secret channel that you could share with us is great for webinars?
Secret channel. Ooh, well, affiliates is really, really great for webinars as well. Sometimes it can be a little hit or miss getting them involved. You want to give them like a good amount of heads up and make sure payouts make sense for everyone. But affiliates is a great, great channel for the webinar model. Like you mentioned, Meta is a big winner for that as well. It does work on YouTube. too. So that's something to note there that works on that channel as well. So no big, let me see here. No major changes to like either channel. Do say the way I would plan it, like orchestrate it for your team if you were doing a big launch, is to start running your campaigns on Meta first, Meta or YouTube first, just to get some initial data. And then that way you've got a little bit of data to go to your affiliates with. It's not quite apples to apples, but again, you're kind of giving yourself a chance there to get the opt-in rate higher and everything, especially if you're doing something live or kind of the first iteration of something new.
Okay, nice. And in terms of other angles to get these products sold, are there any other angles that are effective, or are you finding that webinar is the only way?
No. More traditional campaign setups also work really well. On the health and wellness side, advertorials are I also see working very, very well on paid acquisition for again, just like building that awareness, especially for I should say for like consumer packaged goods like superfoods, supplements, that the advertorials or listicles are working very well there.
Okay.
And that's another one, I guess, to your point, Shmuel, about certain things are changing, but then certain things are tried and true. The listicles is another like format that I kind of consider part of that content marketing book of building that trust and awareness that comes in and out of being a good format for us as marketers, where that listicle or advertorial will work really, really well for a couple years in both financial and or health, and then it'll stop working for a couple years and then it'll come back out. And
Okay.
again, I think it goes back to that just needing to build the genuine trust and awareness with the customer, that rapport with the customer or potential customer.
Nice. I want to switch gears a little bit because you mentioned at the top of the podcast how you're a fractional CMO and you're working with lots of different companies and not even the same niche. But I'm sure like the business principles are tried and true through for most companies. So when you come to a company, I would imagine an audit is the first thing that you're doing for a company trying to figure out like what's going on. Is that a correct assumption on my end?
It is, yes. Yep. So when I join a team, I have a couple page audit that I work through with the owner or the department heads, where we're running through, all the control funnel steps, key metrics, understanding the setup of like the creative department, the production department, really, and then how the senior leaders like to work together.
Okay,
Um, and then that really gives us really just a good understanding of all of the systems, right? The funnels as systems or wheels, data setups, reporting as kind of like another supporting system there as well. And then of course, like the creative process.
so what does that look like? Like just from is that like you just have a Google Doc and say, here, fill this out and talk to me when you're ready? Or is that Zoom meetings where you're working through like a workbook with the founders and key stakeholders? How does that look like on a
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I will usually it's a fairly robust, I will say, but we got big goals to accomplish. So we want to make sure we're like really diving in early to start. So it's like a 5-ish page Google Doc that I'll usually send ahead of time. And then so that most of the team can fill it out ahead of time. And then we'll like have a meeting to go over anything that maybe someone couldn't fill out or just made sense for the whole leadership team to be in super alignment on. So I'd say it's usually about, each department head maybe doing 30 minutes to 60 minutes of just filling out or, linking to Google Drives type of thing,
okay,
just filling out the answers to a couple questions. And then we would have like one 60 to 90-minute call to like go over everything there.
nice.
This is if you're familiar with the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS,
EOS? Yes, I am.
the system I use as a CMO actually like plugs into the EOS system, which is really cool. A lot of founders that are in that, 7 to 9 figure mark, they really like the EOS system. It's a
The
great,
rocks.
yeah, the quarterly rocks and kind of like layering in the departments and breaking that down into, biweekly sprints type of thing so that my audit doc and how I build out a quarterly plan, even the 5-year vision that's all kind of in the back of the mind of this audit doc is also kind of aligning with that EOS model as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the results, obviously it's a two-way street. We have, your coaching and your mentorship on the one hand, but then we also have the client input on the other hand. Do you see
Mhm.
anything, because you mentioned, I believe you said some clients will fill it out, some will send to a Google document, some will be just, all right, let's get on a call and work this out. Do you see anything from like, a day one perspective that's just, I don't know, like has like a red light where it's like, all right, this client's not really taking this so seriously, like this isn't going to be as effective as other audits and other planning that I've done.
Ooh, maybe we don't know what we don't know.
Okay.
There might be like a training phase, or to your point of like, I do like marketers that hustle. We got to make hay while the sun is shining, as farmers say. And so the teams that are want to jump in, will usually jump in, and start filling everything out. One thing that is interesting that I've been doing this for almost 3 years now, and one thing that is interesting to me is the amount of companies that are doing 8 figures, but still don't necessarily have like streamlined data sources or like streamlined reporting, or maybe don't necessarily know their metrics either by funnel or by channel.
But they're still doing 8 figures.
But they're still doing 8 figures. It's so cool. It's such a good problems to have. And, so I love coming into a team like that where, we're already like, we're doing great work. There's a system there that's working, and now we just really need to tweak the system here.
Yeah.
And so that's always a fun one there.
Nice, nice.
Even like my one financial client is doing $30 million gross revenue this year, and still is missing some of those metrics, and
Very
that's
cool.
why they brought me on. They're like, hey, we know we can get to 100 million if we could dial in. We don't quite know what we need. We know we need to dial in, X, Y, and there's probably a Z we don't know about. So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Kristen, if there's any interesting stuff that you've discovered in these audits, like anything that like is just like odd or weird. And I guess you kind of already answered, or at least you gave one example, right? The odd thing is that a company that could be doing 8 figures is having some operational or reporting issues, yet
Mhm.
they're still functioning and still bringing in a ton of revenue. But what about any other like weird examples of stuff that you've like stumbled upon and you're just like, hmm,
Ooh, good question. I have seen, and I think this is one of those things where like an audit sounds so boring. I totally understand that. But to your point, you find some really interesting stuff in there when everyone takes a step back. I found funnels that were broken. I'm sure we all have. I think all of us have probably found, a funnel, it's linked to the wrong calendar or an outdated calendar. And we're wondering why the show rate to the sales team is low, and we realize, oh, wow, one of our top 3 funnels has a broken
is
calendar in
broken
it.
and yep.
And that just happens. It's getting a lot better to audit that stuff with AI, but I do still find that that's a pretty common one, especially with companies that have a lot of funnels. It's just a lot to keep track of, or we'll find something broken in like an email or SMS journey.
Yep.
Kind of fun and interesting, especially when it's like, oh, a calendar is broken. That's pretty obvious. But again, you have so much going on.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, and definitely like when a company is just they're doing their thing 24/7, they're thinking about their company, it gets hard, to take that step back or take off, yeah, I don't want to say the rosy glasses, but take off get clearer vision and really see what's happening in the funnels and stuff. And those fresh set of eyes that you bring could definitely it definitely
Mhm.
definitely does that. So it's probably so important for companies to do these audits whether they hire you or not for
Yeah.
fractional CMO kind of stuff.
Yes, I've seen 2 examples, like, even just in the past, like, 8 months, maybe year now with one of them. I had a client where the sales team and the marketing team were using 2 different avatars. Like a client, ideal customer profile or avatar,
Okay.
because over the 2 years, they had made a few changes, and yeah, so one team was using one profile and the other was and we're trying to implement AI and everything, and it was like, "Ooh, that," glad we caught that. Similarly, I saw where creative teams were using 2 different brand guides. 'Cause again, company just changed a lot of branding and, 2 different employees made 2 different brand guides, and so we're giving vendors, 2 different brand guides and things like that. So those
That's
are
interesting. That's
yeah,
that's
those are pretty funny ones.
how big are those companies? I mean, I imagine like, if a company is, massive, like Meta, thousands of workers, like, okay, that could happen. But do you see that? Did you ever see that like with smaller companies?
Yes, yes. Sometimes I would say sometimes it even happens more in smaller companies because there isn't maybe necessarily like that formal system yet. It's everyone
Interesting.
just trying to be helpful. And so is it the video strategist that's creating that brand guide, or is it the graphic designer? Some of these roles are blending more, but 8 months ago there were still kind of some stronger differences there maybe between some of the roles. But this was a little bit smaller client. They were doing about 5 million gross. And that's when we realized like, oh, you guys are, sharing you have 2 different brand guides on file. Let's like get that tightened up there.
That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
a little bit of a snafu, especially
Yeah.
if it's a different ICP.
Yes. Yeah. The ICP one and across marketing and sales, I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense in a way as to why we're having, discrepancies over like lead quality, show up rates, all of that. So,
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You mentioned a little bit about AI, and I'm just wondering, with AI and everything, where's AI most dangerous for marketers right now?
ooh, twofold. I think what the example I just gave, where maybe there isn't like kind of a system or rules of engagement with AI. And so the go-getters on the team are gonna start, building out, like again, building out 2 different brand guides, or loading Claude or whatever tool with like different data. So we're going to get different outputs across the teams. And so I think that that is one thing to be mindful of, is really kind of creating that system, rules of engagement. And then I think the other kind of like pitfall we can want to be aware of as marketers is like right now AI can do so much, is, drastically reducing the timelines to create ads, landing pages. People used to pay $5,000 to have a website built, and you can do it in like 10 minutes now. So, but I think where that also gets dangerous is there's so much strategy that you can do with AI too that we're really just starting to develop. And so I think for us as like
Yeah,
senior marketers is not getting into a pitfall of like, oh, AI is going to replace everything, and it's more of like, how do we coach AI, and then how do we start strategizing differently as senior marketers and leverage AI to strategize differently. And so the first step is of course going to be tackling the doing, but I yeah don't want us to get caught in
totally.
that pitfall. Yeah.
Totally, totally. You mentioned the coaching, and the coaching is so important. I forgot which university came out with this study. I believe it was a university study or some study where they gave half the students the ability to use AI for an hour, and then they had to take all their findings and then go get to work and prepare their report. And the other half, they had to first do their research, and only after they did their research and formulated their ideas, then they were able to use AI for an hour and polish up their report. And do you want to venture a guess with which group produced better reports?
Ooh, second group that did their
Yeah,
research?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yep. The one that was not, skewed or influenced by AI's bias. First, they were able to produce much better reports.
Wow, that's so interesting. I
Yeah.
totally believe it. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah. But in terms of just building stuff with AI, like in terms of reports and stuff and prompts and stuff, I know for myself, I do it a lot, even with this podcast and stuff. Obviously, this is real, and I'm actually talking to Kristen right now. I should have like a newspaper, right? That I hold up the newspaper, where I could
The
show what
actual
today's
date.
date is. Yeah. Yeah. But what about you in terms of your practice? Are you doing anything that's interesting that you want to share or can share with us in terms of like projects that you've coded or whatnot?
Yeah. So, a big one for our team, and this may or may not be exciting to some people, but as that marketing integrator, I do oversee the production team as well. And so, with one of my bigger clients, we did build out a whole skill that is pretty much project managing the whole video team, which is really cool, really exciting. That would have been a separate role we would have hired. This is, again, like large company producing a ton of ads and then also just a ton of fulfillment content as well. So that's been a really big one for the team. We've built
How does that work? You just say you put in your idea and then all of a sudden it builds out a whole project plan for you?
Yep, it's mainly through like the ClickUp connector there, as we use ClickUp for this client. And so it's building out all of the project templates. It's hooked up to because well, we have projects not only for the video team, but also for all the funnel builds. So it's helping manage all of the funnel build projects as well and all of the steps in that. But for the video team, it is keeping an eye on their status in ClickUp and then also leveraging Slack to communicate as well. So if we don't have an update, let's say someone's been working on a shorter ad for a couple days, should be done by now. We've kind of built in all of those rules of like, hey, a VSL will take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month to create. A short ad will take a couple days. A longer ad maybe will take a week if it's a 10-20 minute ad. So we've kind of built in all of that context to the tool, and then at that point it's leveraging Slack and or ClickUp to keep in touch. This is a 8-person video team, 10 if we count the fulfillment video editor. So pretty big team that it's kind of keeping up with and getting updates on. And as things are moving down the board, like statuses are changing in ClickUp, it's keeping track of all of that and then escalating any issues to like the executive assistant on the team to then flag to like myself or whoever.
Nice, nice.
The other one that is really interesting is we are working, and you guys might have something like this too, is we are working on a media buyer skill for optimizing campaigns. This has been a 6-week project with one of our senior marketers, and it's getting pretty accurate, which is very cool. So I think it'll probably debut this month or next month, but the reports it's pulling together and the campaign adjustments are like pretty much right on point. I know for our head of growth, he is like, this is my whole brain, is like, my brain is in this skill.
Yeah.
So for him, that's very interesting. That's kind of another thing we could probably talk about too, is this
Wow.
idea of intellectual
Are you
property.
Yep.
Um,
Are
that
you
will,
building that with Claude?
yes, yep.
Wow.
So pretty neat. Yeah, I can maybe we'll do another episode and I can share more on that as we test
That's
that out
yeah,
over the next
that's really
month.
interesting. I'd love to
Um,
hear like
yeah.
how that comes along. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's very cool. Yeah, that's been at least 6 weeks in the making, maybe honestly about 8 or 9 now. So that's very cool. I think that's probably another piece too, is some people, AI makes things a lot faster, but to your point of like having to really coach it, there's still a lot of setup time, a lot of coaching time, a lot of nurture time. I think, a couple months
A
ago,
lot of tokens.
yeah, a lot of yeah, a lot of tokens. I think some of us thought a few months ago or a year ago, like, oh yeah, well, AI is going to change everything, and in 2 months we'll be going at lightning speed. And it's like, no, there's a lot of setup time, a lot of coaching going into this too.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see any like I don't know, like pushback from that? Like, if you're sitting with this, from a team, like is everyone on board with this?
I think it go a little bit of both ways. I think like they're on the marketing teams, I feel like there's a lot of early adopters in general. I think it's just the nature of the role and the folks that enjoy doing that role. I've seen a little bit of pushback with my creatives, with my video editors, with my graphic designers that really value the kind of like the individual creativity and feeling like that's going to be lost, taken away by robots or just kind of just cookie cutter because of AI. I'm not seeing that yet. And where I get a lot of adoption from them, where at first my creatives are maybe like a little bit hesitant or feel like it's going to make things impure, maybe kind of muddy the waters
Well,
of
yeah,
creative.
I mean,
Um,
I also think like in a certain way, they're digging their own grave. Like,
Yes.
if all of a sudden we don't need the creatives, we don't need media buyers. So
Yeah. What do you do next? Where do they go next?
exactly. So where do people go next? What do you think? Where do you see like things, especially with AI? And I guess people are a lot more savvier. Like when I first, this is a true story here. Like when I opened up Claude and I got my subscription, I pretty much just asked it, "Give me the world," and like 20 minutes later, it was like, "You're out of tokens." So I'm like, oh, I got to think about tokens. I got to be a little more strategic on how I ask things, and make sure I put into Claude that it needs to be conscious of things. If I'm going to be using a crazy amount of tokens, like it should give me a little warning. It should oscillate between the different models and stuff like that. But yeah, but where do you see things going with the AI within the next like 12 months?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I know we already mentioned like about a year ago, people would spend a lot of money to have a website done. Now you can do it in like 5 minutes,
Hmm.
which is very cool. And I think to your point, like there will be one, I'm already seeing it now with my video editors or designers that were like, oh, like you need that human element. Like they're editing so much faster now, or getting maybe that first draft brainstorm buddy. Um, that they never had. And so they like at first, again, there's that hesitancy, but it's helping them on the execution and brainstorm side so much that I think they're already seeing like, oh, I am going to get left behind because everyone else can edit footage twice as fast or make those animations. Now, we don't, for some of the video animations, like we don't need to go to a graphic
Yeah,
designer to make them. We can just make them ourselves as the video
absolutely.
editor, and so that kind of streamlining is happening. We're testing this out with a client. I can't tell you if it's going to work or not, but just to your point of where I think things are going, for one of my like smaller clients, we were going to hire a video editor as well as a graphic designer, and we made the decision to just reduce that into a multimedia designer with a stronger foothold in video, knowing there's just so much resources on the graphic side
Yeah,
that we didn't need the two roles. And again, it's a smaller team. So at that point, they just became, multimedia designer and expected to use AI. That's where I
yeah,
that's where I start to see some things going, especially like on kind of the creative production team. Like I mentioned, like project management. I think a lot of the non-human elements of project management will be taken over by AI, like I mentioned as well, where we were going to hire a project manager and we ended up hiring an executive assistant and leveraging,
who's
the
able.
Quad and ClickUp connector to handle a lot of
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely going to be a constriction of jobs where AI is going to take. But on the flip side, I think entrepreneurship will see a rise, and it's going to force people. It's going to push people to be more creative, and we're going to see more businesses opening up, especially in direct response and e-commerce space, where all you need is an idea, and you need a fractional CMO like yourself to help you get off the ground, and it's a little bit of AI magic, and you're in business, right?
I'm in a CMO mastermind, and I can't tell you how many there's probably 100 of us in this mastermind, and some of them are working in the fintech space and telemedicine space as fractional CMOs. These companies don't even have marketing teams, and the CMOs are just leveraging AI agents to do everything.
Wow.
And it's wild. I mean, and some of them are startup levels with just good funding, and some of them are very mature, 8 figure companies. So it's very cool to see. And I'm sure they're leveraging some contractors and stuff like that as well. Of course, still need the human element. I don't mean to say that, but it's certainly very interesting that you can be orchestrating a small marketing team with AI. We have a small, or excuse me, for my largest client, actually, the financial company, they just built a whole skill that is handling all their social media posts for them as well,
Wow. So
which is
they're
very
just,
cool. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Full disclosure, I do that with my social media posts about this podcast, and it's definitely a big help. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. It's definitely, like the Chinese proverb says, we should live in interesting times, right?
Yeah.
And we're definitely, if you're a marketer, I think this is a very interesting time to be in. And you've shared so many golden nuggets with us. So thank you so much for your time. Let me just ask you, where can listeners find you? How can people get in touch with you, especially the small brands that are just like, hey, I need someone like Kristen to help me get off the ground or get to that next level. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so my website is just 5dstrategy.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kristen Palmer. And on my LinkedIn too, you can also book like a calendar meeting if you'd like as well. I've got like 15-minute slots or 30-minute slots. That's all right on LinkedIn. Or if you just go to, Calendly/Kristen Palmer, I'll be there as well.
Awesome. We'll be sure to put all of those links in the show notes. But Kristen, thank you so much for joining me on the Built to Scale podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
Thanks for listening to the Built to Scale podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a conversation about what it really takes to build and scale in today's market. For more information about Built to Scale and how we help companies grow, visit builttoscale.co. If you have suggestions for future guests or topics, send us a note at podcast@builttoscale.co. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, this is your host, Shmuel Hirschberg. And remember to keep building, keep testing, and keep scaling.